All right, so this is chapter 17, employee stakeholders and workplace issues, and this is going to be presented by Malcolm, Madison, Travis, and Brittany. So we're going to get started with today's workers versus yesterday's workers, and this is kind of going to go in the concept of the social contract and employee engagement. So first, we're going to do this comparison because this is going to involve the social contract ideals. Yesterday's workers, they looked at things like lifetime employment, loyalty is important, and work is work. Whereas in today's society, we follow career progression, uh, lacking loyalty, and I'll touch on that a little in more details, and then work needs meaning. So we could say that older times like 1950s, it wasn't uncommon for people to have lifetime employment and be extremely loyal to a company. That's kind of how things were. People thought you stay loyal to a company, you keep a steady job, you'll have great benefits when you retire, a pension. Well, in today's society, that has definitely changed. People are more, the younger generations like millennials are more interested in career progression. The term job hopping is very common. You can hear amongst younger generations because that's how they can see their career progressing. Even in my own field, I've noticed people that jump from firm to firm, they make a lot more money instead of staying with the other firm. And they also have more opportunities to have better titles or more important work. And that leads to kind of work needs meaning for the younger generations. For the older generations, work was something you did, you showed up, you did your job, and then you left. Today, we have a much more interest in what we're working on and what we're doing. And then I'm going to backtrack to the loyalty part. As I said, with the older generations, they were pretty generally loyal. They believed that corporations should be loyal to them and they should be loyal back to the corporation. Well, as time moves on, employees notice that they're pretty expendable. Their jobs can go away, as we even saw with the pandemic. A lot of people who thought they had secure jobs lost their jobs. So this led to the idea of the 1099 gig society. Short-term gigs, usually considered independent contractors. The employers are off the hook for benefits, while the employees have to take on some costs. And so that's kind of where we've gone with the social contract. And then I'm going to go deeper into pretty much a social contract is understanding between business and society. And as I showed in the last slide, it changes throughout time. And the social contract is pretty important for employee engagement. Employee engagement is the idea of employees having a emotional interest in their form of employment. And to improve employee engagement, corporations should do things like investing in their employees, giving them more flexible hours, actually caring about the employees is the main goal. And employee engagement, corporations need to kind of follow the ever-changing social contract, or else they're just going to lack employee engagement. And some great benefits of employee engagement are improving overall company success, less turnover because people want to stay, less shrinkage because people don't want to commit crimes against the corporation that they feel is wrong them. And despite all those efforts, a Gallup poll that was taken shows that employees are really not engaged despite having career progression training and more flexible hours or more time off. So it's still kind of up in the air for what corporations can do to improve employee engagement. So I'm going to shift it over to the employee rights movement.
So the basis for the employee rights movement comes from the debate about private property of private organizations. And private sectors have not been as subject to constitutional control because of private property. And this states that individuals and private organizations are free to utilize their property as they desire, meaning that they are not subject to employee rights to the same degree. The debate between private organizations and stakeholders as to what extent should property rights be changed or altered. In the past, labor unions have been credited for substantially improving the lives of workers in the workplace. However, labor unions are becoming less prominent within businesses, especially in the private sector, where only 6.7 workers belong to unions. While labor union rates within the public sector are much higher, they have little effect on private organizations. By lawyers, employee rights are defined as claims one can enforce in court. However, the textbook views employee rights as justifiable claims that cannot be overridden by utility. While employee rights have moral rights, they too have legal rights. If a right is to be morally right, it should not depend on the organization's ability to provide it. So there are three sources of these employee rights, and they are statutory rights, collective bargaining, and enterprise rights. Statutory rights are rights provided by the law to protect employees. An example is the right to receive at least minimum wage, and in Michigan, the minimum wage is $9.65. Collective bargaining is the process in which union contracts protect workers' rights. An example of collective bargaining is where employees are granted a certain amount of breaks while they're on the job. And enterprise rights are guarantees or promises made by the employer. And one example is the right to a complaint system for an organization to address complaints and solve disputes.
Now we're going to move it on to models of management.
All right, so there's three models of management. We went through these kind of before, but this is in relation to how it affects the employees as stakeholders. So moral managers, they view the employees as a human resource that must be treated with respect. So they're going to respect all basic human rights, all employee rights, which include freedom of speech, safety, and privacy. So anytime they have to make a decision, those are going to be taken into consideration. The end goal of this is for the employee and employer to have a mutual trust that results in commitment between those two. This is important because as they transition, they want to develop their employees. They want to kind of shift back to that older way of doing things, not just job hopping and having a gig economy. They want to treat their employees right and keep them there longer. A good example of this would be back in 2008 when we had the financial crisis. A lot of companies were like cutting employees, cutting wages, layoffs, stuff like that. And Costco actually gave their employees a raise during this time, which was a pretty big deal. Nobody else was doing that. They wanted to show this example of how you should treat employees, and because of that, they had a lot of ones who were very loyal and are still loyal today. The other one, an amoral manager, basically they are going to do whatever they can to stay within the law, but the main goal is productivity of employees. They have little to no interest providing any personal growth opportunities for the employees. The organization is going to be acting in self-interest, and the employees are seen as replaceable. So if they can't meet the productivity that they want to see, the employees are going to be kicked out. Privacy and respect are not viewed as important as long as it operates within the law. A good example of this one would be a lot of factory jobs. Is really focused on the productivity of the employees. There are some opportunities to advance in these jobs if you just simply put up with the amoral managers. If you stay there, you can progress, like I said, but so many people just end up hating it that they leave, and basically the same positions are just filled and filled and filled as you go forward. Finally, we have the immoral managers. This is a rough one, right? Employees are basically seen as not to have any rights or needs, and they're just viewed as a factor of production. Employees are often manipulated for personal gain for the company or an individual immoral manager. So these type of people you'll see like the photo we used. These immoral managers will just step all over employees and use it for their own personal gain to maybe look better to a boss. So that's really the only example I have. I don't have a specific one. But if a manager were to use employees to, make themselves look good, this would help them progress, but then they could always, throw the lower level employees under the fire.
All right, so now I'm going to switch over to the right not to be fired versus employment at will. in today's society, a lot of people perceive the idea of the good cause norm, which is defined as a person would be let go or fired from their job for a just cause. They would have an actual reason to be fired. Whereas the employment at will is actually based on the private property concept that Madison touched earlier. And it's the idea that if an employee has the opportunity to leave or join a place of employment at will, then the employer has the right to let them go or keep them if they want to without any just cause. The good cause norm, a lot of people believe in it, and that's how they should be, how businesses should run and keep employment. Whereas the employment at will is what's actually pretty much followed. As you can see from like 2008 recession, a bunch of layoffs. Most of those people never truly had a just cause for being laid off. It's just they were lowest on the totem pole and they got let go. The other issue with it is the good cause norm. There's really no legal documentation that allows it to be followed. It just kind of exists. Whereas the employment at will, it's legally accepted because there's no legal documentation for the good cause norm. There's more, and given that you're not breaking any discriminatory laws, you can fire an employee for almost any reason that you want. It just has to be within discriminatory laws. And kind of as I said before, the good cause norm, not really world applicable. It's more of it's an ideal than an actual practice. Whereas employment at will is practiced practically daily when people are let go. They can be left for any reason.